Hey, it's Justin Brown here from Primal Video. In this video, we're going to take a look at a side-by-side comparison with the iPhone 7 Plus and the Google Pixel. We're going to compare both the front-facing and the rear or the primary cameras on both devices to see which is best for video. Alright, so we'll start out by looking at the rear or the primary cameras on these two devices. The iPhone 7 has a 12 megapixel camera, whereas the Google Pixel is a 12.3 megapixel camera. The iPhone 7 has an f1.8 aperture lens for its wide angle camera and an f2.8 aperture lens for the telephoto, whereas the Google Pixel has an f2.0 aperture. They both have image stabilization, they both have 4K video recording at 30 frames per second, and the slow motion capabilities on both are identical. Both of them will do 120 frames per second at 1080p and up to 240 frames per second at 720p. We thought we'd start by taking these devices out into some bright sunny conditions. The first thing we noticed was that the Google Pixel has a slightly wider angle lens. Now this is definitely the closest side-by-side comparison that we've had. The results too are inconsistent. In some cases and in some scenes, the iPhone 7 had much richer colors. And then in the next shot, we'd find that that was totally flipped and that the Google had a much brighter, much more vibrant image. We did find overall though that the Google Pixel had a slightly sharper and higher detailed image. And there was also a higher dynamic range across the board from all the shots that we did, which means that there's more detail in the darker, shadowy areas, and there's also more detail kept in the bright or the highlight areas. The other major thing that we've noticed that you'll see throughout this video on the Google Pixel's footage is that the auto exposure adjustment or the auto metering adjustment is changing constantly. In some cases, the colors are just flickering and changing throughout the shot. The autofocus on both worked really well, but it was definitely quicker with the Google Pixel. And now when we look at the image stabilization between the two, again, we've got mixed results. In some of the footage, the iPhone 7 has done a much better job at stabilizing the shaky footage, whereas in other shots, the Google Pixel is the clear winner. So comparing the slow motion capabilities of the two devices, the Google Pixel definitely had a cleaner, crisper image. But the image on the iPhone was slightly brighter. And obviously a special thanks to Mike, our stuntman here. Now testing these two at nighttime is where there were some big differences. The Google Pixel is definitely much brighter, but it's also a noisier and grainier image. The iPhone 7 Plus is a much darker image, but it also really struggled in low light with autofocus. And just to show you the zoom ranges on the two devices, obviously the iPhone 7 Plus has built-in 2x optical zoom, and there's only digital zoom on the Google Pixel. And then when you combine the optical 2x zoom on the iPhone 7 Plus with its digital zoom, then here's the differences side by side. So it's a much sharper, more detailed image on the iPhone 7 Plus. And obviously the zoom speaks for itself. So now let's look at the specs of the front-facing cameras. The iPhone 7 has a 7 megapixel camera versus an 8 megapixel camera on the Google Pixel. The iPhone 7 has an f2.2 aperture lens versus an f2.4 aperture lens on the Google Pixel. And both of these cameras will shoot 1080p at 30 frames per second. So this is where we started to see some big differences between the two cameras, but again, the results were inconsistent. In a lot of cases, the front-facing camera on the Google Pixel, the color temperature was definitely a lot warmer. So there was a lot more red or yellow in the shot than the more realistic looking iPhone 7 Plus. Now, as for the detail and the quality of the shot, the Google Pixel had a clearer, sharper image. It just doesn't lose as much information in the finer details than the iPhone 7 Plus. Now, testing the two front-facing cameras at nighttime, the iPhone 7 Plus had a brighter image, but it was also a much grainier image. And obviously you can see we've got some issues with the front-facing camera at nighttime on the Google Pixel. The playback is really stuttery or really choppy, which is strange because when you play the clips back on the phone, they play back smooth. But after transferring and playing the clips back on the computer, this is what we were left with. So I'm really hoping that Google can fix the issues with the camera with just something as simple as a software update. So there's a quick side-by-side comparison of the iPhone 7 Plus and the Google Pixel video cameras. If you are using your iPhone or your Android device to create content videos, then make sure you grab our free checklist, which is the complete guide to filming professional videos on iPhone and Android. I'll put a link on the screen now and below in the description. I'll see you next time.